is Jenna, and today I'm going to be doing a wrap up for the books that I read in October, November and December of 2018. So as I'm sure you guys have noticed if you've been watching my channel for a while I was in America I kind of stopped making YouTube videos, and I didn't want to, but honestly I got so busy while I was over there with studying and with traveling, and I also kind of lost a lot of, I don't know, motivation I guess to post videos. I just didn't feel comfortable doing it where I was. I missed having my books, and I felt awkward filming the videos where I wasn't with what I was doing. So instead I decided I would just wait and I would just do a big wrap up when I got home. So I am pleased to say that even though I was so busy, I still managed to read a lot. So in October I read 3 books, November I read 3 books, and in December I actually managed to read 5 books. And that is something amazing and incredible that I was not expecting at all. So we're just gonna hop straight into this as it's going to be a long video. So the first book that I read in October was Light Years by Cass Morgan, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. So this book was absolutely brilliant. The characters were so vibrant and I just wanted to know what was going to happen next. The relationships themselves were super unpredictable, and I kind of loved that about it. Like I went into it having some ideas of what was going to go on, and like I sort of was like, oh, this character's probably going to like go with this character and this sort of thing, but that was definitely not the case, and I was just completely blown out of my mind a couple of times. There was one relationship in particular that I did not see coming and was kind of like, what? So I loved that aspect of this book. So the only real issue that I had with this had to do with the plot and the pacing of the novel. The plot itself was really good, and I really liked the concept. I loved this idea of having this academy in space and having these, you know, like this war that's going on. I love that concept. I think it's brilliant. But my real issue was the pacing. I thought was really quite off. We spent a lot of time setting up, and then all of a sudden we had the big climax, which took like a chapter at the most. So I had some issues with the way the book was paced and how everything sort of built up to where it did, and then the actual build up itself, the big event that happened at the end of the novel, happened too quickly and too conveniently in my opinion. So I definitely had some issues with that. But apart from that, I absolutely adored this book and I cannot wait for book 2. The second book that I read in October was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. So I was definitely not expecting to enjoy The Bell Jar as much as I did. I actually found that even though this was a uni book, I literally couldn't put it down. So I loved that about this book. I thought it was brilliant. I really enjoyed seeing the representation of depression in the 60s, and I'm actually really glad that I had the chance to read this book and that we studied it, because I am really impressed with everything that I read. And then the last book that I read in October was The Continent by Kira Drake, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. So the thing about this book itself is that it wasn't a bad book, it just wasn't a great book either. It had a lot of problems. It was full of insta-love and had some pacing issues, and that's not counting the issues that it had before publication, because full disclaimer, I did not read the original arc. I did know about a lot of those issues going into it, and I have to say I didn't see a lot of them left in the finished copy, but besides that, the book had some issues of its own. The real issue that I have with this book is that a lot of things don't happen, and then they all kind of happen at once, and then they don't happen again. So I had some real problems with the pacings. There was also a romance that went from 0 to 100 in like no pages flat. Like literally one page they were not even talking, and then the next page they were madly in love. It was really weird and really not well paced, and I didn't particularly enjoy that at all. The ending of this was also super predictable, and I literally guessed what was going to happen at the end of the first chapter. And the other thing was, this book took a really long time to get going. Like on the back you hear that this character, she's going to get stranded on the continent, and then you have to wait like a good quarter of the book before that actually happens. If you're going to tell your readers in the blurb that this character's going to get stuck on the continent, you might want to hurry up and get them stuck on the continent, because otherwise your reader's going to get bored, and that was definitely the case with me. There was too much setup and not enough payoff. So it was good, but it wasn't great. So the first book I read in November was The Essential Odyssey by Homer, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Funny thing is, once again, I was not expecting to enjoy this book at all, and then I ended up loving it. Like I really did love reading it and hearing all about Odysseus and his travels home, and it's because a lot of those stories I'd heard about, but I'd never actually read them. So it was really nice to get to read it. And side note, I loved my mythology class, so pretty much anything we read from there I absolutely adored. Second book I read in November was actually an audiobook, and that was The Northern Lights by Philip Pullman, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. It literally took me 2 months to get through this audiobook, but that's not a reflection on the book itself. That was a reflection on how much time I didn't have to read. But I absolutely adore this story. I'm really glad that I reread it now, because when I read it when I was younger, a lot of the Christianity themes went directly over my head, and I really appreciate getting to read it now and getting to see just how truly ingrained the Christianity is into this novel, how integral it is to be a part of it, which is something really different, something that you don't expect from a lot of children's novels. So getting to read that was just something that I was expecting it, because because I knew about those themes going into it, but actually being able to see and understand them this time meant I was actually able to get through and to understand the book a lot easier than the first time I read it. I absolutely adore the characters in this novel, but I particularly love Lyra because she is such a clever little character who she lets her temper get herself into a lot of trouble, but she's very clever and sharp-witted, and she just has this real silver tongue, so she can get herself out of these situations that she inevitably put herself in, and I love that in a character, especially one so young. The plot itself was really interesting and it kept me wanting more, even though there was a lot of travel time involved in this novel. Like, there was a lot of travel time, but I never felt bored. I always felt like there was something going on. There was something going on with Lyra or with another one of the characters, something to get myself through the travel, even though there was so much travel involved. The audiobook itself was incredible. It was actually a full cast audiobook, and I didn't know that going into it, and Philip Pullman does the actual narrating, so it's definitely one that I would highly recommend that you listen to. And then the last book I read in November was Angels in America by Tony Kushner, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. This is a play that is set at the turn of the millennium and is all about America and the AIDS crisis, and it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. That seems to be a theme with a lot of the uni books that I read. I read this one for university, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed thinking about how they might have done everything on stage, and it was really a good book and something really fun that I enjoyed reading and I enjoyed studying. And then the first book that I read in December was The Fandom by Anna Day, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. So I didn't actually expect to like this book, or not expect to like this, but I didn't know much about it going in, but I do remember when it came out, I remember a lot of people were like, oh, you know, it's got like a great concept, but it's not that good. So I went into it with kind of a bit of like trepidation, but I was in the mood for a high fantasy, and so this is the one that I chose out of the few books that I had, and it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great storytelling, it had great characters, and I overall really enjoyed it. This book has a book inside of it called The Gallows Dance, and I don't know about you, but I want to read that story. Like, I know we kind of have read the story because they literally give us a recap of that in the beginning of the novel, but like, it sounded so cool. It sounded like a really interesting novel, and it was something that I actually would have really liked to have read. That's always fun when you read about a novel inside a novel and you're like, I want to read that novel. Not more than this one, just as well as this one, because it was such an interesting novel. I just said the word novel way too many times in one sentence. One thing I will say about this book though is I thought it had very inconsistent characters at times. The characters, there were a lot of them. There were a lot of characters, and a lot of them felt really unnecessary in a way. They just kind of felt like they were there for filler, because a lot of them were characters from this book within the novel, and I don't know, some of them I felt like we could have done without. I did really love reading from Violet's point of view though, our protagonist. She grew and changed from the beginning of the novel to the end, and that was something that I really loved to see. The other thing about this book was that it was kind of predictable. So I spent the first like half of the book thinking one thing, and I was partially correct, but by the time we got to the ending, they started throwing twist after twist after twist in my face, and I was just like, what is happening? Like, I honestly thought I knew what was going on, and then the ending happened, and now I'm just sitting there like, what do you mean? Like, this is insane. This is completely opposite to what I thought was gonna happen. And I, number one, going into this, definitely thought it was a standalone. I'm seeing a theme here. I've done this before. Thought it was a standalone. It's not. It's got a sequel. I want to read the sequel because I am so interested in how they're gonna go about it and what they're gonna do after the twists that they threw our way at the end of the book. So the next book that I read in December was Ash Princess by Laura Sebastian, and I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So for me, this book had really two-dimensional characters in that a lot of them felt like they were just cardboard cutouts of people, and I really struggled with that, particularly with our main protagonist. She had a lot of opportunities for us to dive really deeply into her psyche, but we just didn't. We just sort of skimmed on the surface, and so because of that I felt like I didn't really know her, and I also felt like she didn't really grow throughout the novel, which is something really important to me. I really want to see a character grow from one side to the other, so I definitely would have liked for her to have had something just that little bit more unique to really feel like she was this badass princess that she was supposed to be. So this story was incredibly predictable. I definitely knew what was going on as I was reading it, but at the same time it was really predictable, but it was so engaging that I found myself staying up really late at night because I knew where they were going. I could figure out where they were going, but I wanted to see how they got there. So it was predictable, but it also wasn't predictable, because it was predictable in that I knew where they were going, but it wasn't predictable in sometimes some of the things that happened on the way. way I was like, did not see that coming at all. The other thing was, this book is dark, but it's not dark enough. Like there were some moments where they really walked the line, but they walked it on too safe of a, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to explain, but like they could have gone one or two ways and they strayed way too far one way instead of staying on that line, being that really iffy, like, I don't know, you could go either way. There were definitely moments where I was like, you could go either way, but it's very obvious that you're not going to. And I think this book definitely could have benefited from some of those darker moments, which makes me sound like a sadist. But I feel like with a book like this, I feel like it could have gone darker. And then the last thing I wanted to mention with this one is I love the use of berserkers. Not gonna say what they are because spoilers, but all I will say is I think it's because I did a lot of medieval stuff and I definitely think they were taken from medieval times, and it's awesome, and the way they used is so cool. The third book that I read in December was Vardasia by Lynette Noni, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars to. This is the conclusion to the Madoran Chronicles. I was lucky enough to receive an very early arc, literally an e-arc from Pantera Press for Christmas. Wasn't really for Christmas, but it happened around Christmas time and that's when I read it, so I'm pretending it was my Christmas present from them. It's brilliant. Y'all ain't ready. I will talk about it more when the book is released. The fourth book I read this month was Winnie-the-Pooh by A.A. Milne, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This book was super cute, but there wasn't really much else going for it. Plus I had some issues with the fact that Christopher Robin both had a gun and shot Pooh. Like, what? Like, I know the book was written in the 30s, but still, what? It just, that was weird to me. And the last book I read in December was Mary Poppins by P.L. Travers, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. So going into this book, I had to remind myself that it was written in the 1930s, so stuff was gonna be different, but I didn't expect Mary Poppins to be a nasty character, and she was a nasty character. Like, she was really not nice, and that weirded me out too much. Like, I know that the book and the movie are very, very different, but it weirded me out and it made me uncomfortable, so definitely only gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. And there you go, that is all of the books that I read in October, November, and December of 2018. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section below if you have read any of these books. I would absolutely love to know. If you like this video, be sure to give it a huge thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing. Stay random. Bye.